More questions about Jobs Ohio and more speculation about John Kasich's future.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Jackie Borchert, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News. Joe Hallett, senior editor for the Columbus Dispatch. Gene Krebs, former state legislator, and Joseph Moss, chairman of the Ohio Hispanic Coalition.
Each week, it seems, there are more questions about ethics and transparency of the state's quasi-private development agency, Jobs Ohio. This week, the Associated Press reports Governor Kasich, a former board member of Worthington Industries, was still getting deferred payments from the company as the state was awarding the company tax credits. Last week, the Dayton Daily News reported that 2/3 of the Jobs Ohio board have financial ties to companies getting state help. Kasich says he has no role in selecting who gets grants and who does not.
Look, this is politics. This is just, I'm used to it. It's mudslinging. Let me tell you this. The fact of the matter is, whether it's a friend or whether it's a foe, if they're going to create jobs and the incentives that are necessary to encourage them are within the bounds of reason and reflect a proper return on investment, we want to do it.
Jackie Borchert, this comes down to how much influence, if any, does the governor have over the decisions that are made by Jobs Ohio?
Well, and we really don't know exactly. You know, we have this board that he has appointed people to, but then we're told that, you know, this board doesn't actually, you know, make the decisions as to which businesses get what incentives, and at the end, you know, Jobs Ohio, sure, they vet these incentives and these requests, but at the end, the development department is the one that's handing out the money. So there's not a clear path here, but it does definitely raise some even more questions, just looking at, you know, the ties and Kasich's past.
Is this any different than because this is Jobs Ohio, and because there are controversy over the privacy and the nimbleness and everything else? The state has always given grants, but because it's Jobs Ohio, is it getting more scrutiny this time around?
I think it's getting less scrutiny because there's no authority for the government to peek into this entity. The governor signed into law a bill which eliminated oversight by the state auditor and by the Ethics Commission. And so we really don't know what programs they're using to hand out the money. The money comes primarily through the Ohio Tax Credit Authority that awards incentives to businesses. But the members of that board also are appointed by the governor.
I think that media scrutiny, it seems like the media is going harder after this and looking more deeply into these grants than perhaps they did when Governor Strickland or even Governor Taft was in office.
Well, I think there's two important things to remember. One is that the Jobs Ohio process is, shall we say, more diffuse. There's not a single gatekeeper. And there were some allegations made with some validation during both the Strickland and the Voinovich administration. There was a single gatekeeper that was tying these grants to campaign donations. So that, I think, is something that you've kind of taken out of this a little bit. But I think the core reason goes to, and I've been on the record and say this before, we have all of this corporate giveaway or business incentives, however you want to call it, because on some levels our tax structure is not competitive to those of some other states around us as to certain types of taxes. So perhaps lowering the income tax, the governor wants to abolish it, I'm not willing to go that far, but capping that at 2.5% might make some of these programs not necessary. And the numbers come out about right, about $4 billion in unnecessary. I think some of these tax giveaways are just, you know, superfluous.
Joe, the Ethics Commission, the chair and the head of the Ethics Commission said there's nothing wrong here, this is fine.
Well, I'm not sure that he exactly said that. I think that he just didn't fall within the purview of what they were looking at within the Ethics Commission.
Well, he said it's a clean break and it's clear as a whistle.
And he was referring, because there are two issues here. He was actually referring to the deferred compensation that the governor is receiving. But the second issue is the one that Jackie began to address, and that is with respect to the quasi-public organization that then Gene addressed, is trying to bring business into Ohio. And it's interesting because you asked Joe Hallett about scrutiny, And the problem is that because, as from Joe's perspective, the scrutiny isn't there because it's been blocked by legislation, by the General Assembly, then what you have is suspicion. And from a political standpoint, I think that's much worse.
The Ethics Commission did have purview over the whole Worthington Industries deferred compensation issue. But as Merle Brockman, the Ethics Commission chairman, rightly noted, there was precedent for allowing Kasich to receive the deferred compensation. Kathleen Burke, who was head of the Lottery Commission under Strickland, had an arrangement that she got deferred compensation. So they really couldn't do much with that. Everything appeared very legal.
And there's a third step here, by the way. They have asked for information through public records request as to whether the governor has reported this income, but I would suspect that he probably has.
Is it tough because the governor will no doubt campaign on the success, he says, of Jobs Ohio, but can he claim full credit if he says, I have nothing to do with it?
I think, once again, it goes back to this is a diffuse system. And I got to tell you, it goes to the issue of there's no good way to do this. Either, previous administrations had single gatekeepers. Paul Misfit comes to mind as a very infamous gatekeeper on this, okay? That was not a good system. This is a much more diffuse system, I think, until we get to the system where the state tax code is structured in a manner so that these no longer are major players in attracting businesses to come here. We're going to have this debate.
But Texas does not have an income tax, correct? And they still give out incentives to businesses.
They still do, but they have another problem down there, though, of some other things, too. So
I think it's much easier for Kasich to claim some wins from Jobs Ohio than it is for the Democrats to say that it's not working. I mean, the burden is on the Democrats to prove that this is broken, and that's the problem with not being able to, the Ethics Commission not being able to investigate and to look into some of these things because, ethically it may be sound on paper, but it doesn't smell good.
But exactly, we the Democrats don't have to attack as to whether it works or not. We can discuss the secrecy and the suspicion and let the voters decide.
And he can always claim, rightly, that I set this up. This was my idea to make the state more business-friendly, and I let it go, just like a good CEO would do. So that could be his argument, and still keep at arm's length to Jobs Ohio.
He'll claim credit.
Yeah.
Well, sure, and it's a political fact of life that governors always claim credit for jobs gained and always get the blame for jobs lost. That's what contributed to Ted Strickland's defeat in 2010. Yeah. We lost a bunch of jobs
economy.
due to the recession. Not necessarily his fault, but he got blamed for it.
Yep. All right, topic 2. Remember last week when we speculated about the 2016 presidential race because there was not much else to talk about? Well, this week, John Kasich actually gives us material. In a speech to the Franklin County GOP, Kasich pushed for a federal balanced budget amendment, and referred to Obamacare as Hillary Care. So is the governor fueling speculation that he is the best Republican to take on Hillary Clinton or another Democrat in 2016? He says no.
Always in politics, people are trying to assume what your ulterior motive is. I have no ulterior motive. My motive here is to get the federal government in a place where my daughters can have a good life. And secondly, I do want to see health care reform, just not the health care reform we have. And my only point on that is when Washington holds us back, Ohioans pay the price.
Joe Hallett, that sounded an awful lot like a campaign stump speech of a presidential candidate.
Well, yeah, there was just a convergence of things. My colleague Joe Varden fleshed it out really well in the story. And, on top of the comparing Obamacare to Hillary Care and the speech to the Franklin County GOP, there was this very flattering story in the Wall Street Journal, which laid the groundwork for a Kasich presidency, calling him a softer brand of conservative. And I think John Kasich no doubt liked that very much. One of the ironies of this story is he went out and I think tried to establish a national platform as a guy who was going to lead a national movement for a balanced budget amendment. Yet at the same time, he wants to take in billions of federal dollars for Medicaid expansion, and that money would be borrowed money from the federal government. So there's a bit of an irony in all this.
And the whole, I mean, he's opposed to the president's health care reform law, but yet he's going to take a major component of it, the Medicaid expansion.
But I think it's also important to remember that of our $62 billion budget, $39 billion of it is federal pass-through. So, of which 1/3 is already borrowed, and it goes into every single department in the state that I'm aware of right now.
So should they be sending it back?
Well, that's what I brought this up to some Tea Party folks, and they kind of looked at me going, "What is that much?" And I go, "Yeah." And are you aware that 5/6 of every dollar the state collects gets sent back out to local governments and local agencies right now? And they kind of look at me and go, "What?" There's a lot of data desert out there. People don't know how things work.
So, I mean, he still has to run for re-election in 2014, Jackie. So what role does this speculation play in the 2014 campaign?
I mean, it can only help him to be in the national media and to have that spotlight, especially when it's a flattering story, like Joe said. It elevates him to a level that Ed Fitzgerald can't achieve. It
will help his national fundraising for sure, but he's got to be careful not to get out ahead of this governor's race because, Ohioans expect politicians to be ambitious, but he's got to win a governor's race before he can even think about running for president. And if voters see him as running for president first, they won't like that.
Joe, Democrats are going to portray him as running for president first, I assume.
Yeah, but I want to also explore something else. The New York article that Joe Hallett mentioned also painted him in a way that the words that came to mind was compassionate conservatism. You remember that from years ago.
Yeah.
And so that we're coming full circle around to a type of Republican perspective that, at least as of right now, is not popular with the Republican base. And by the way, let me add that I think that is driven not necessarily by the true base, but is driven perhaps by conservative media. That is driving that perceived or expressed anger.
And I think, though, we'll know if Kasich is looking towards 2016, is that if he starts to dial back his reforms. Because if you're going to go for 2016, you all of a sudden start playing it safe. Now, so far, I've seen nothing in this administration that ever says play it safe on anything. Their biggest problem with the General Assembly is that they're just exhausted from trying to keep up with everything they keep throwing at them. So, looking at this governor's past behavior, I'd say he does not have a bad case of Potomac fever right now. I think he only has Scioto River fever.
You have to remember, this guy ran for governor or for president in 1999, so
right,
I think it's always been in the back of his mind.
I think it was clear from that clip that he is. He says there's no ulterior motives, but at the same time, the two things he named, the federal deficit and health care, those are issues he can't solve as Ohio's governor.
Hillary care.
Yeah.
Hillary care.
Gene, will compassionate conservatism win the Republican nomination in 2016?
I don't know. And it's because there is three separate segments to the Republican Party. There is the old Whigs, which is now the Chamber of Commerce. There are the moralists, the abolitionists, and they are now the social conservatives. And then you have what was the American Republican Party, which was essentially the Know-Nothing Party, which is now morphed into the Tea Party. Those are the three major components of the GOP. And usually the presidential nominee is a Whig because they have the money. Reagan was not a Whig. Reagan kind of bridged across all of those. And what Kasich is not a Whig, but if he's going to win the nomination, he has to bridge across all three of those different segments.
Can he raise the money, Joe Hallett? That was what hurt him in 2000. He tried, but he just couldn't catch fire, couldn't raise the money.
Yeah, I mean, for president,
yeah,
sure, I think he could raise the money. Now, with these third-party groups out there, we saw Sheldon Adelman, the billionaire casino owner, basically privately fund Newt Gingrich's campaign.
And John Kasich went to meet with him about a year ago.
Right,
in Vegas,
along with the Koch brothers. Yep. So, I mean, the Republicans are on the verge, once again, of nominating a candidate who can't win a general election. When they start talking about Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and those guys, they appeal to the base, but not much beyond. Kasich might appeal beyond that, and if he could get through a primary, I mean, look out.
All right.
I think it goes back to where does the Whig money go to? And that will come out of the Indian Hill zip code, is where all of that's decided.
Indian Hill zip code is?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, okay. The city of Columbus has big plans for the west bank of the Scioto River in the Scioto Peninsula downtown. The plan calls for the demolition of the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, replacing it with a new Veterans Memorial. The memorial would have a sweeping structure. It would have a museum, an amphitheater, and a park. It would be quite a bit different than the current Veterans Memorial. There would also be a mini Columbus Zoo on the Scioto Peninsula, and the plan calls for the development of office buildings and apartments and retail space just west of the peninsula in Franklinton. We don't know exactly how much it will cost or how much taxpayers will contribute. We do know that Les and Abigail Wexner will give $25 million for the new memorial. Joe Mas, we've done a lot on the east side of the river. This is the west side. What do you think of this?
And we heard that this was coming up, that there was going to be a formal announcement, and then this week there was a formal announcement presentation at COSI with the mayor. We had John Glenn and we had all three commissioners present a plan that I'm excited about. I think it's beautiful. It does have at one end of the peninsula the new true Veterans Memorial, not an auditorium but a memorial with a museum and so on. At the other end there's going to be a zoo feature. But let's not forget there is a third component here, and that is going to be a neighborhood of about 1,200 residential units with commercial space, because these are 4 or 5 story things. Think of Columbus Commons type of development. And I think that that is going to not only energize, but it's going to make the Scioto River a 2-bank river for development. And I'm very excited about that.
Question is, $25 million will pay for the Vets Memorial, but there's a lot more money involved here. How do we pay for this? Is it going to be a public-private partnership, they say?
You can do some modification of a SID or something like that.
Which is a
investment district, yeah. Special improvement district. General rule of thumb, gross general statement, cities that embrace their water feature tend to do better and tend to progress. Now, the only cautionary note with this, if you look at Cincinnati, they wasted a lot of rivers bank space down there, putting in their 2 stadiums.
Because it ate it up.
Yeah. And the banks, which is their big development down there, should have gone for 2 miles instead of going for like several hundred feet. The only thing I need to think about is, are they utilizing it in the best purpose? Or are they going to you're going to look at a mistake down Cincinnati and kind of go, maybe you might want to move some of this stuff just off the river and look at what really brings people down to the riverbank more.
Well, this is a visionary plan, I think, for Franklinton, for the west bank of the Scioto, which has long been overlooked. But also overlooked in this whole process is what the trustees of the current Vets Memorial want. On the same day this plan was rolled out, the vets sent to the county commissioners their own plan, which just saw the light of day today, and it calls for a construction of a new hotel, construction of a new veterans complex, which would continue to hold entertainment venues, and also, veterans display area. I think the trustees feel like they've kind of been lost in this whole process, but my guess is that given who's behind the other plan, that's the way it'll go.
Having John Glenn show up at this event. I mean, first of all, he's a neighbor. He lives at Marinova, correct? And so he's going to look at this memorial. But I mean, you have the #1 veteran in Ohio, Jackie, supporting this plan. It's going to be hard for veterans groups not to go along with it.
Well, I think that was probably why they put John Glenn as the veteran's face on this. You can't argue with what he said, and he supposedly, brought some groups of veterans together to talk about what they want. And the artist rendering, I think, is really beautiful. It's something that looks like it would really honor all veterans and have a space that's available for activities, but also a space inside where people can visit year-round. But I think you were right that it really is that the best place for something like that, or is there a better use of it?
Just a block off. And the other thing, and keep in mind, I am a conservative Republican, so therefore I'm supposed to be against all poor people. But I will tell you that gentrification is a concern, and if you're going to build this over there, you are going to eventually, if you're successful, start pricing some poor people out of their housing market. So you need to start making plans now. And people all around Central Ohio now falling to the floor and writhing because they've heard Republicans say something nice about making sure that poor people have a place to live. But you need to do that.
It's a challenge of gentrification, and I think that's what you're perceiving might be happening. But I don't think that that necessarily will result 2, 3, 4 blocks further west from the area. I do think that there's going to be improvement to the value, to the real estate value of the area, but I think that folks will still have a place to live.
Okay, let's get to our last topic. OSU has a new smoking ban. You cannot smoke or use any tobacco product on campus. Not just in the buildings, you can't smoke anywhere, not in parking lots, not on sidewalks, not on loading docks, not walking across the oval. The university has not started enforcing this ban just yet, but when it does, violating staff and faculty can face suspension, even termination. Students face disciplinary action. OSU says it wants to be the healthiest campus on the globe. Gene Krebs, when we discussed this on Ann Fisher's talk show on 89.7 this week, all of the calls we got were opposing this, and they all came from non-smokers. Does that surprise you?
Not at all. And I think what we're seeing here is kind of like what Mayor Bloomberg is trying to do in New York City. This is the high point of the nanny state. And yes, I agree. People should not smoke. And it goes back to, you mentioned before about the beautiful artist rendering for the river stuff. All those people are thin. Okay, they're all thin in all these artist renderings. Okay, but that's not what we know. Yes, we need to lose weight. Yes, people need to stop smoking. But I'm a little bit cautious about putting up too much of a nanny state on some things.
By the way, the artist rendering was a projection to 2015 and 2017.
So we
when
will
we're
all
going
be
to be slim at
yes,
that time.
committed to be
we have
fit,
anything
yes.
to do about that. I looked into this a little bit. It looks like about 770 of the nation's 2,700 four-year institutions have a similar ban, or the total ban, no smoking inside, no smoking outside. And the statistics regarding the percentage of the population that's smoking has held pretty steady over the past 10 years or so at about 20.8%. And I think this is an effort, whether you want to call it a nanny state or maybe an effort to influence those that are under your sphere of influence for a while, but I think it's worth a try, and I think more than that, I think it's a direction that everybody's going.
Certainly, since a strong statement that this is not our campus. Our campus is not going to, and it's, I don't know if it's even tolerate, but it's just that's not who we are. We're not going to have the smokers hanging outside the doors, or have cigarette butts all over the ground.
Smoking, though, is now almost completely an activity of the non-college educated.
But there's a lot of staff people on campus who still smoke and things like that. I mean, I'm an OSU employee. I don't smoke, but I know folks who do and who will be affected. And they expect me, as an OSU employee, to be the enforcer of this. The police aren't going to enforce it because it's not a law. It's a human resources issue. But they want OSU employees to tap folks on the shoulder and say, "Are you aware of our smoking ban?" Joe, what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's Big Brother. I'm not a smoker either, but sometimes I do think it's overkill. I mean, they banned smoking in Ohio Stadium years ago. My feeling is if there's an open air environment and you can segregate smoking areas, then that's okay. Smokers do have rights, and I know the rest of us who are non-smokers have rights not to be exposed to their smoke, but still, I think you can find areas for people, for kids who are studying under pressure, they want to go out and have a cigarette. I mean, why not?
Can I respond to something that Gene said about who is it that actually smokes? The group that is stopping smoking the fastest by far are educated males.
Yes. Yeah.
This is part of an overall strategy that OSU is doing. A lot of big institutions, big companies, they're tying your health insurance premiums and coverage to you living a more healthy lifestyle. They want you to log your cholesterol and blood pressure and all that good stuff, to lose weight. And that's what they're trying to do, is trying to lower their insurance costs. It comes down to the money in the bottom line in some ways.
I kind of hope so, I suppose. We do need to take personal responsibility over our own health and maybe even the health of each other. And, it's a liberal perspective, maybe.
Let's get to our off-the-record final comments from our panel. Predictions, final thoughts for the weeks ahead, and we'll start with you, Joe.
Cheerleader for the city of Columbus. This dovetails into what we're talking about, the peninsula. Related to that discussion, I hope our viewers in the suburbs take time to visit downtown Columbus after work and on the weekends, since the development of Columbus Commons and the construction of new upscale residential areas on the east side of the river. Downtown Columbus has enjoyed a renaissance of sorts. There are free fitness classes, concerts, new restaurants, and this weekend, a food truck festival.
All right.
Complete with live music and children's activities.
With the recent announcement that former State Senator Bob Cupp, former Supreme Court Justice Bob Cupp, is running for the Ohio House, within the next decade, we need to learn how to say the phrase, Speaker Bob Cupp.
All right, Joe.
Well, I think next year you'll see Ed Fitzgerald, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate, run as much against the Republican-controlled legislature as he does the governor, Governor Kasich, because this legislature, I think, is seen as extremely conservative, far more than mainstream Ohio, obsessed with guns, obsessed with abortion, and Fitzgerald will make the point, I will wield the veto pen. I'm the guy who's going to stop the Republicans.
And Jackie.
Well, I'm going to look forward just to Monday, and that's when former Deputy Treasurer Amr Ahmed is going to be arraigned in federal court for charges of fraud and taking bribes. And my colleague Laura Bischoff has been following this story for a long time, years if you go back to before the investigation started, and she'll be there on Monday too, so check in with DaytonDailyNews.com.
Okay. I predict for the Downtown Columbus project that there will be a levy on the ballot, but they will not announce the levy for the downtown project until after the school levy is done in November. Don't ask people to pay two sets of taxes. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Please check us out online. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Connect to all of that at our website, wosu.org/COTR. I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.